Hello, everybody. I am Nick Teixeira, joined by Gordon Dixon and DJ Sayer here for what should be a phenomenal bracket draw. And we're going to take a live look at it here to see who's playing against who and who's going to get their claim to fame to play on ESPN. And boy, am I excited for this one. The players are excited for this one. And I'm sure Gordon and DJ are as well. Gordon, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to kind of dive in here and see where me and DJ agree, and maybe sometimes even more fun where we disagree.
Yeah, and there's going to be plenty of exciting matchups where it's going to be a little fiery on who's going to actually come out on top. It's hard to pick a clear favorite besides, of course, two-time champion Alex Spellman going for the three-peat and everyone else going to try to take that honorific away from him. I'm excited to take a look at this. What about you?
Yeah, we'll go through each of the matches. Obviously, we know the top four from the past 2 years, so we'll highlight those for everybody. But honestly, this is just another example of how kind of our sport is moving forward, because we don't always get brackets like this ahead of time, and some of the most fun that you can have in enjoying a sport is some of the banter about matchups and how things are going to play out, and you kind of see where you are with your calls. So I'm excited for it all the way around.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the BullShooter Invitational 2024 bracket brought to you by Operators Distributing Incorporated. Let's jump right into the mix here with our first set of matches.
Well, I can start off. I can tell you that I think Elliott's going to beat Bye for sure.
Yeah. Elliott's gonna move into the second round. Good call there. But no, the one play-in match in this little section, we've got Jillian Phillips taking on Brian Bigham. Right out of the gate, we've got the fanciest dart player I've ever seen against a fella nicknamed Bubba. Like, this is two opposite ends of the spectrum right here.
I'm excited. Brian, I know you've had some more experience with him being a little bit further south in Ohio, and seeing him come over and headed over to play with him. Seeing him at the BullShooter finals, he threw some really good darts. So if he is able to overcome Jillian Fancy Pants Phillips, I'm excited to see that next matchup with Elliott Milk.
Yeah, I think the fair thing to say here is Brian's the favorite over Jillian. Not that Jillian can't pull the upset, but just based on the standard that Brian has been putting out lately. And then I mean, even Milk, he better pack a lunch, because not getting that first match under your belt, Brian should, if he does get past Jillian, should have a bit of momentum going into that second round. We know the first round seems to be the one you got to get over the jitters normally.
Yeah, and having that play-in match could be the difference here if it allows Brian to kind of get his feet underneath him before they get started. In terms of averages, I mean, would you say that they're playing at a similar level?
It's hard to say because I don't know Milk's soft tip average, but I would give him the nod. I mean, I would say he's probably low fives, whereas Brian's probably high fours, maybe very low five. But yeah, it's a close one.
Yeah, I was kind of putting you on the spot because I was the same way. I don't know exactly where Milk's soft tip game is, but I do know where Brian's been playing, or at least where I've seen him playing, and I think you nailed it.
Looking at Jillian here and looking at all these females, one of the big things for them is they really want to set that statement piece of saying, hey, the ladies have come to play this year. And every year, you know, I mean, we've seen in the past with Chrissy Grimmel making runs at this and Paula Murphy and the like. They're trying to say, hey, the women's game is progressing. We want this big win. But Brian's going to be a big hurdle for Jillian, and I think you guys are correct in your analysis. Elliott Milk probably going to be the favorite in this section here, but it'll be a close toss-up between him and Brian Bigham there.
So our next one, we've got two buys here. So essentially just one matchup. Speak of the devil, Chris Grimmel taking on Dustin Larson. So I'm not too familiar with Dustin. He's one of the few players on here that I don't know a whole lot about, but I don't make very many bets against Chris Grimmel anyway. So for me, it's Chrissy's to lose simply on the unknown and the known of Chrissy.
Yeah, Dustin qualified from the BullShooter World Finals. He's the Pro A501 doubles first place. So obviously a very good competitor. We will be playing 501, so I think that that probably should come into play. I'm the exact same way, much more familiar with Chrissy, and I think there's an intimidation factor, especially with the top tier ladies, that could come into play here. And Dustin may find himself a little worried playing Chrissy in the first round. You've already got first round jitters. You're playing probably the best female in the field. That might add up to a couple extra holes out on some shots.
Yeah, looking at Chrissy's game, if you look at not only just how she's done on the stops that she's played at this year, but also just on top of that, her year-round performance and performance in other competitions as of late, she is in form right now. And when Chrissy's in form, it puts everybody at a call for concern, if you ask me. Dustin Larson's definitely going to wish he had a different draw. And that's somebody just because there is that certain level of intimidation when you're playing against Grimmel, like you mentioned there. She has that fiery nature at the line. It's something that's, I would say, intimidating despite the height stature there.
All right, so getting a look at our third bracket, we've got Ruben Herrera taking on our first international player, Daniel Zapata, with Taylor Thaxton having the bye here, waiting for the winner. I gotta say, having the international player in here as the unknown, we saw Carl's make the final last year. I like having these guys in the field just because of the unknown for them. I think Ruben's probably going to be up against it. I mean, from what we've seen from the international players, I mean they're here on merit. As we look at Daniel, BullShooter Europe Online League playoff winner, so. It being a league, I don't know what all that entailed, but it being a league, I mean, he finished top of it. So yeah, honestly, I'm gonna pick the international player just on that.
Well, yeah, Ruben qualifying through cricket. Again, you have to hit triples. You still have to hit what you're aiming at. So I'm not trying to downplay that, but I think given that the format is all 501, I think giving the tip to Daniel makes a lot of sense. And then Taylor Thaxton, an Ohio lady that is no slouch on the board. So whoever does come through that matchup is going to have their hands full for sure.
The first time I watched Taylor play was in the Monsters of the Midway event this year in Chicago, where her and some of the girls from Ohio were going right up against some of the OGs of the game when you have Meredith McGee, Chrissy Grimmel, and the like on a team going against Taylor Thaxton and her team. It went down to a last leg decider, and Taylor was calm, cool, and collected. And there's a reason Carrie Thaxton refers to her as the head of the household. She's made a proclamation about a year ago saying, I want to bring my game to the next level, and I think she's an absolute threat. But with your analysis of Daniel here, you're not only spot on, but when I was commentating the European finals for BullShooter, he had the most ton plus finishes on any day that he was on stream. His finishing was absolutely incredible, and his scoring left some to be desired, but it only matters about that finishing double. And I think Daniel, if he keeps up that finishing prowess that we saw from him, will be a very strong competitor in this. And I would dare to say probably favored in this section of the bracket.
Gotcha. Into our fourth mini bracket here. We've got two buys with Randy Fern and Sean Caflisch making it to the top 16. And just to remind everybody, so each of these, every two, we're following the bracket straight down the list here. So the winner here will have the winner in that Taylor Thaxton versus Herrera and Zapata match that we were just looking at. So that's kind of how this whole bracket piece comes together. But here we've got somebody in the top four from last year, a runner-up the year before. taking on Sean Caflisch. I think we got to favor Randy Fern. He's used to being on this stream. He's used to being on ESPN2. I think this has got to be a tip for him.
Yeah, Randy, a guy that just shows up and wins. As you said, he's made the TV stage both years. While he did regress a little bit, going from second to top four, lost a pretty tough match to Carl's. We were kind of predicting a rematch of the first year in the final, but didn't get it. But yeah, Sean, I remember him playing well in Chicago. He was actually partnered with Dustin Larson in that doubles 501, so that's kind of ringing a bell. But yeah, I think Randy, big favorite here.
I hate to be the devil on the shoulder, but I do think this is probably one of the first big upsets potentially here for Randy Fern. If not to Sean Caflisch, then to the bracket that also leads into this, like you said, with Daniel, Rubin, and Taylor. Randy Fern has a great CV, and I don't want to discredit his ability. He's an excellent shot, and he's done well year one and year two. But what I will say is that this is the third year going on. Players have high expectations, but they're also going to be a little bit more comfortable. They're a little bit more familiar with the idea of this event, what they're playing for, and I think that you're going to notice players like Sean and some of these other cool collected heads might be able to just kind of shrug off some of that pressure a little bit more than in years past. And I think Randy Fern's going to have his hands full here.
Getting into our next bracket, we've got Lloyd Allen Bugg taking on Kerry Thaxton, with the winner taking on Ram Guevara. So Allen Bugg, I remember from years ago, but hadn't seen much of him the last decade. And now all of a sudden playing again. Certainly a solid player. Kerry, the not head of the household for the Thaxtons, I just learned. So yeah, this one's really close to call. I'm gonna go Ohio Pride here and give Kerry a slight edge, and then I think Ram probably has to be the favorite in round two.
Yeah, the only thing that I'll say, Thaxton for me, just there's a little bit of an inconsistency to his game. I've seen him shoot extremely well. I think what we do have in that first matchup is both are going to go into it thinking they've got a shot. They'll know that Ram's on the other side. They'll know that that's going to be a handful. But that first matchup, they'll kind of relish the idea that they've got a legit shot. And again, just like we were talking about earlier, if that play-in match gives Brian Bigham a chance to settle in, maybe Elliott's at a little bit more of a disadvantage. That may be the exact same case that we see in this little mini part of the bracket.
Couldn't agree more there. I think you look at Ram, you look at Kerry, you look at Lloyd. I think they all have the same top end gear. I think Ram just finds himself consistently in a higher drive. And that's going to be the difference maker here. And you're exactly right. A cold start could be a cold start. When you don't get that first round comfort and you get those first round blues, even when you don't play that match, you don't get a little bit more warmed up than you would like. It can lead to some pretty hairy scenarios here. And I think if any one of these three names won this section, I wouldn't be surprised.
Getting into our next bracket here, we've just got two competitors, two buys, Rich Sterbenz and Dustin Holt. Rich, another guy that I was pretty unfamiliar with until this year, but he's definitely been impressive when I've seen him on our stream. Dustin Holt, I mean, Mr. BullShooter, he's always winning, probably our most winningest player over the last couple years at regionals for sure. For me, I got to stick with the known commodity of Dustin. Although he struggled at this event both the first 2 years, he still made deep runs, just kind of fallen slightly short of the TV stages. So I think we'll see Dustin potentially go a little better this year.
Yeah, I was gonna highlight that as well. Obviously, we do get to see a lot of Dustin. I really like Dustin, but he has underperformed at this event, especially to see how he does at all of the other events. I mean, he's constantly in top fours. So to not see him in the past 2 years has been kind of surprising. So I do hope to see him kind of live up to expectations this year. Rich, again, an online qualifier. Haven't seen a whole lot of him, but Dustin Holt is quite the first round draw, and I think experience. If everybody has jitters in the first round, the more experience you have, the less jitters you have, and I would tip Dustin in that category.
Well, I love my Florida boy, Rich Sterbenz here. Unfortunately, this is a tough first round draw. And if there's a time to get a tough draw, I debatably say the first round's almost the most favorable. You don't want someone to start catching up and heating up, playing them in like the 4th, 5th round after they played a few tough opponents. So if there is a time for Rich to play him, this would probably be the time. He has the game, but you'd have to go with Dustin Holt here 9 times out of 10. But that being said, I mean, there's always an opportunity for things to flip around. Gonna have to go Dustin Holt here.
And if we're looking at even the next round, that does add in a tasty Holt Gravera potential for this section of the draw. We've got Leonard Gates and Mike Porterfield. This is probably the biggest match of the first round. Just looking at consistent names throughout the rest of the bracket. Gates, another one you kind of have to point out, underperformed at this event the past 2 years. He may be or is one that will be looking for some redemption to go a little bit further. Easy for me to say. Mike Porterfield, one of the hot players that we've seen on streams on the steel tip side and on the soft tip side, winning against Jules in a big match at one of the regionals. So the highlight of the first round, as far as I'm concerned, or in the top 16, I look for Gates to pull through.
Yeah, for me, the same thing. This was the match that kind of jumped off the sheet when we received the bracket. I'm gonna basically parrot everything you said. Leonard needs to have a better performance here. I'm sure he wants to have a better performance here. I mean, he's cashed in on paydays this size multiple times, like in a row in years past. So this one, having passed him by now twice, I think he's going to want to remedy that. And then Porterfield's the guy that, for me, that I mean, now's your chance. Like he's always been talked about. I know he plays a good bit online against like Maloney and stuff. We all know, I think, how good he can be. We've seen it. I mean, at his regional alone, he had Jules Van Doggen in attendance, and was winning like pretty consistently there. So this, for me, is his biggest event to date, and I think the first real opportunity for him to prove all of his friends and fans that he does belong.
Simply put, I'm buying into the hype. I think Mike Porterfield, just from how dominant he was in not only New York, but in Pennsylvania. You know, you guys are mentioning Jules Van Doggen matchup that he had in the finals there, the pro singles. But also on top of that, his Doug Bain final that he had going on in New York was absolutely incredible. And he was basically dominated 2 whole regionals with his performance. He's shown that he clearly has the game. Of course, a Team USA participant this year for Arachnid as well. Pretty important, mentionable there. I will say this, though. If Leonard Gates gets to day 2, he wins the whole thing, in my opinion. The question is, can he get there? And I think this first round matchup will entirely decide that. If Leonard Gates can get through Mike Porterfield early on, he has a good chance to cruise control, if you ask me. And Mike Porterfield, I think much of the same for him, although he has more to prove here.
So our next one, we've got just 2 competitors here. Aaron Zimmerman taking on Bob McCoy. Aaron, another one that I wasn't too familiar with prior to this year. I didn't do any of the Tennessee commentary, but I actually was told that he put on a pretty good clinic down there. But for me, Bob has just been pretty good the last couple years, so I gotta peg the real McCoy here.
Yeah, I unfortunately I don't have any additional insight. I think I don't know. I never know how familiar these players are with one another. I think there's definitely a possibility that Aaron could catch Bob by surprise. Again, we keep talking about first round. Neither of these players get a play in, so that may play a factor in there. But I just don't see any other result other than Bob McCoy coming through on this one.
Aaron feels like he's playing with house money here, right? He didn't really expect to get qualified. He didn't expect to be in this event, and he's happy to be here. Anything else that happens is extra. And I think when you're playing with that mentality, it gives you that little bit of freedom. But of course, Bob McCoy, I mean, he's really been that guy. He started off the tour, right? When he went over to Florida and had a great performance out there. He's one of those guys that whenever he's in a bracket, he is absolutely lethal in it. In fact, I could tell you, I interviewed Bob McCoy before we did this show here. And let me tell you, he didn't even know how much first place prize money was. When I told him that it was looking like a pretty chunk of change there, he was kind of surprised. He was just playing this to playing it for the opportunity to play on ESPN. And so for him, I think that kind of is a little extra motivation of now realizing that there's a decent chunk of change at the end of this potentially.
All right. So if the match that jumps off the page is Leonard Gates and Mike Porterfield, this for me was a very interesting full little top 16 section of the draw. Because I think Tim Adams and Jordan Meyer could be a banger that goes to the last leg, and that's going to follow up with a matchup against Kevin Luke, who was in our top 4 last year. So this one, all kinds of outcomes to me are possible. I do think you need to tip Kevin Luke. Again, just a little bit more experience, not only with this event, but playing in high dollar events. But it's pretty tough to rattle Tim Adams. So if Tim can make it past Jordan, I think it wouldn't be a surprise to see him into the top 8 out of this section of the bracket.
Yeah, you said it's tough to rattle Tim Adams. I don't think you can rattle Tim Adams. You may beat Tim Adams, but I don't think you rattle Tim Adams. Just super consistent, that big loopy throw, and they just kind of drop in there. I really like Tim. Glad to see him back throwing. Jordan, another player that's been around for quite a while, has a bit of fun. I really like watching Jordan play as well because he's pretty animated. I would tip a Tim Adams, Kevin Luke second round. And like you, I think we have to go with Kevin. Just having been here so many times, a past TV stage in year 1, he made top 4. So yeah, I think Kevin with the experience and just a bit more recent form, we got to go with Kevin.
And I swear I'm not doing this just to be the contrarian here, but I've just been so impressed with Tim Adams' form in Chicago. I was impressed with Tim Adams' form in some competitions leading up to this. Since then, he's one of those guys, like you said, you can't get rattled. But on top of that, I think Jordan Meyer is going to be a good matchup for him. I think it's going to be tough, and it's not going to be a gimme by any means. But it's one of those matchups where it will get him loosened up or Jordan loosened up, vice versa. And Kevin Luke not having that play-in match, I think, is definitely a disadvantage in this particular scenario. Can't look past Kevin Luke, of course, not only for his past experience, but again, a Team USA Arachnid participant this year. I'm going to give a slight edge to Tim Adams. I think that we could potentially see a big name drop down to loser side of the bracket early on here.
So our next bracket, which will play the winner of that bracket, we've got Mike Maloney taking on Jessica Melton. Maloney, for my money, the last year or two has been the best soft tip player in the U.S. He hasn't done well at this event both years, so I'm sure he's definitely wanting to improve on that. I know he came pretty close last year, just falling a little short. Jessica partnered with Jillian Phillips. That's how they got here, winning the the women's A 501 doubles in Chicago, I remember Jessica having like the standout performance there. So I certainly think Jessica can challenge, but I think it's too much to overcome here. Mike Maloney a sure win.
Yeah, I was hoping to remind you of that performance because I remember Jessica as well. But yeah, I can't really add a whole lot here. I think Maloney does go through. Jessica, however, will have this as a really good test of her skills early on, and if she can grab a leg or two off of Mike in this match, it could stead a lot for the rest of the day. And then, of course, if she could pull off the ultimate upset, that would be huge for her. But taking small wins in big tournaments like this is something that that can also really drive experience and performance going forward.
And one more thing, just worth mentioning that I'd kind of forgotten about. I remember in Chicago, Maloney early doors was still kind of yipping, still had a little bit of the itis there, and our chat basically blew up because I thought maybe it was creeping back in, and everyone basically informed us that no, this is what Maloney does. The early rounds, he has to get it out of his system. So if that does creep in, then I think Jessica could really challenge him here.
Now, Maloney is one of the few names. Basically, all these players I've been interviewing here in the last week or so, trying to get a conversation with everybody and brush up the knowledge. A lot of the players have been asked the question of who you're picking as a favorite besides yourself. And the second most popular name other than Alex Spellman has been Mike Maloney, followed by Mike Porterfield, at least from my experience. And then a handful of other people picking the names of like Leonard Gates and Bob McCoy. When you look at this here, it's hard to not see Maloney kind of getting over his in-person tournament loss streak, right? He's definitely been on the come around. MVP for BullShooter Chicago finals this year. And then on top of that, just one of those guys that really feels like he has something to prove in this particular event, especially being Arachnid's unofficial employee on Facebook. Jessica Melton on the other side of things, when I had my conversation with her, one of the things she actually made it important to know is that she is a bull shooter and that the split bull aspect might come into play. It might affect her a little bit because she's just not as comfortable in that as she was otherwise. I definitely think that's going to be interesting to see if she can overcome that and kind of settle in. But of course, tough first round match and tough match because winner of this will play Adams, Meyer, or Luke. And I really think this is a tough section of the bracket to be in overall.
This portion features Trevor Sellers and JT Davis. JT, obviously a returning top four participant from last year. This was probably second place for me as far as matchups in the first round. I have to assume that these guys are familiar with each other, just given geographically. They're fairly close. We've got Southern Ohio, Northern Kentucky. I never really know where JT is exactly, and then Indianapolis for Trevor. But both these guys have extremely high levels that they can play at. JT, obviously, I think with the more accolades over the last couple of years. But this one, again, I could see it go down to a decider and just a banger match of the top 16.
I agree. This definitely jumped off the page as well when I was scrolling through. Just to help you out here, JT is basically your neighbor. He's in Springfield, Ohio. But, yeah, JT made the top four last year, but I haven't seen him do a whole lot since. I think this one is so close. It's a tough one. I would probably lean Trevor just because I don't know how much JT has been playing.
Yeah, here's the thing, right? If you look at JT Davis in the last couple of years, has done some big strides in his game, and I think he is a top talent in North America. I think he wants to cement himself as one of the top talents in North America, and winning a tournament like this will come a long way in helping prove that and cement that. Trevor Sellers is one of those guys where he's a very talented shooter. Personally, big fan of him as a person. I think that he's going to feel like he has something to prove here rather than the other way around, and JT Davis will get a chance to maybe settle in. Trevor will be a little bit on edge, and that's going to be something tough to overcome early on. You have to make sure you get settled, relaxed, and really let the blood flow nice and even keel in these first round matchups, especially something as tough as this.
And finally, we get a look at our two-time champion, the only man to ever hoist this trophy, Alex Spellman, will be taking on Todd Moore. It's one of those things. I think Todd's a heck of a player. I know we've seen him partner up with Dustin Holt a couple times, and he definitely holds his own. That said, Alex Spellman's just a different level to 99% of people, and I see a deep run for Alex again. I don't see a three-peat, but I do see a deep run again.
Yeah, knowing that the winner of this plays the winner of Trevor and JT, I think there will be a test early for Alex. I just don't know how much Todd Moore is going to be for him. Like I said, that's really no slight on Todd. I don't know that there's many people on the list that I wouldn't have said the exact same thing about here for Alex. Again, he's one of those players that as he gains more experience, as he gains more matches, he just seems to have settled down so much more. Not that he can't lose matches. I mean, he doesn't win every tournament he enters, but he certainly doesn't. His B game is higher than a lot of people, and that's what you're looking for in darts. Is you want to know that when you're off, you can still win matches, and I think Alex has shown that across the last 18, 24 months, no problem.
You know, everyone is framing this almost as an Alex Spellman Invitational, right? I mean, if he wins the third year, it will definitively almost feel like it is that. And he's going to come with this mentality of, hey, this is my home field advantage almost. He's going to have the most experience. He's going to have the most comfort. And also, regardless of this, just the most stage experience in general, other than probably the likes of Leonard Gates in this. I think that is something that is one of those intangibles. And to not discredit Todd, but everyone's going to be framing this as looking at what's going to happen in round 3. And if Todd overcomes this, if he does do the run right here, this is exactly how you have to start it. It's a statement piece, right? If you're Todd and you beat the 2-time champ in the first round, everyone's going to be looking in the room. Their heads are going to swivel and they're going to stare right at him and say, come on, Moore, do you got more?
All right, into the next little section here, we've got Donnie Lassie and Travis Brewster. The winner will take on another one of our international players. We said it earlier about the international players. I think these are great additions. I think it gives us a little spice to the brackets. A little bit of unknown is definitely nice to have, or at least some unknown expectations, because I don't know how David's coming into this matchup either. Donnie Lassie and Travis Brewster, however, I've seen play a lot. Travis, an Ohio guy, obviously get to see him mix it up both in person and on some of the streams. Donnie Lassie can play at a very high level. I tip Travis in this one only because I think he's been a little bit more consistent. But if Donnie starts playing at his highest level, I don't know that Travis can keep up in a 501 setting.
Yeah, I kind of repeat everything you said there. I really like Travis and Donnie, but Travis just been getting out there a lot this year. So I think he's pretty hungry. I would not be surprised to see him come through, and then it really comes down to how good is the unknown. David Bautista, I always look at it like the international players to put in this much of an expense to travel all the way over here, they have to favor their own chances. And if they're doing that at that much money, then I have to assume that they're at least one of the best players in their country. So then I would put them on the likes of the Alexes and the Leonards and the Maloneys. So I think that just off of that, I typically favor the international players.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the international player, David, right? I mean, they're going to be coming with something to prove. They're going to say, hey, we got one of our guys in the top 4 last year and got into that mix. We want to have all 4 spots, right? Or 3 spots, because there's 3 from Spain this year. That being said, I talked to Donnie, and Donnie has not been playing darts lately, and he's actually kind of concerned about his form going into this. He's overseas doing work right now, and he basically comes right back and goes straight to the event. He is worried about his first round performance, and I think if you're Travis, he's kind of been the journeyman of the tour. And I think he's going to come into this and have a chance to get settled in. And that's going to be very scary if you're David. I think David's going to have to sit here and watch a tough matchup between these 2 competitors and say, okay, now I have to best whatever they did. I could go either way between Travis and David here, but I am going to give the advantage to the Spaniard.
Taking a look at our next bracket, we've got Mike Philly Seagal taking on Nicole Persing. For me, Philly's one of those players that it's a little inconsistent, but I mean, when it's on, it's pretty fun to watch. He did win the Pro A singles in Chicago. If he can find that form, I think we're in for a treat here. Even in that next round, if he is able to get past Nicole, I think he's going to challenge whoever comes out of that last one. And then Nicole, she won women's singles in Tennessee. I think she obviously likes her chances as well. She's coming to play. So I favor Philly, but I think this could be a pretty good match.
I actually I rode the bus to the airport with Mike right after that singles win, and I was kind of eavesdropping to begin with, and then I joined the conversation. But he was just talking about how poorly he had played in the event before that he was like almost not going to enter the event, and his partner's like, dude, you can do this. You should go ahead and enter, and he ends up winning the event. But I think that speaks to a little bit of the consistency, which may come into being a factor down the road. I also for the female qualifiers, I didn't even think about it, but they very rarely, even in their 501 events, are shooting at triples. So I'm wondering if that's something that will plague kind of all of the women, even though being champions in their own right, maybe not having the familiarity with this format could come into play. I tip Philly to go on here, and honestly, if he can get past this, I agree. The next round looks fairly even for him as well, especially if he's got a pretty good pace and standard about him.
I mean, like I said earlier, the ladies are trying to make a statement piece here. I think this is one of the other rounds where a lady does have a pretty good chance early on to get that win. Of course, we talked about the Christy Grimmel, Dustin Larson matchup on the top side of the bracket there. I think Nicole has a chance here. I don't think she's out of the running. Mike has a big range of ability of what he can throw, and if he throws the best of it, he is going to be favored. It's definitive. It's just math there. Nicole, on the other hand, will have to play like she has something to prove, but she can do this match. If she really brings the best of her ability, there's a decent opportunity that she can make it to round 3 here, and then on top of that, have a good matchup against an equally tough opponent. It's any man or woman goes section of the bracket, if you ask me.
All right, getting into our penultimate section here, just two competitors in this section. We got Joe Cheney and Derek Hinkle. Joe, year 1, made the top 4, and Derek, I got to admit, Derek is one of those players that, like, we see, and every time I see him, he seems to just be playing well. I mean, I remember back from the TOC days watching him play, and then just this year, he and Johnny Lackey making some deep runs at different events. He just always seems to be playing well. But Joe is just such a seasoned pro that I'm going to favor ever so slightly Joe Cheney.
Yeah, Derek had an absolutely stellar comeback in the finals that I think ultimately is credited with qualifying with Johnny Lackey. It was a 10-darter. It was a perfect game. I can't remember. It was very good. Game. Under pressure, had to happen. There were some other things going on, but I also remember from that match there was a lot of really questionable math and outshots, and I will always call those out because I think that's a big part of this game, and I think those little bits of knowledge and positioning yourself appropriately are the things that can really carry you through, especially when there are really tight matches, like I would say this is on paper. So with that kind of standing out to me, I would also tip Cheney, but yeah, have no doubt if Hinkle's the name at the other end of this bracket, it would not be a shocker. He played some absolutely stellar darts in some really pressure situations, which is also something that that can bode you well to try to win a tournament.
You can't discount Joe Cheney at all, right? It had a great performance in year one. One of those guys that really is always in the mix, and a guy that's going to be comfortable in this style of format. He knows his math, he knows his routes, he knows his outs. That being said, I will say his performance in Tennessee was far from his A game, and he ended up getting by with it. And and that's a testament to his ability to persevere. But that being said, he wasn't as sharp as we're used to seeing him, and it is going to be tough because Derek Hinkle did hit the only 9-darter on stream of the tour. Shout out to also Patrick Atea, who hit one on our overhead camera in between matches as well. But Derek Hinkle hitting that 9-darter, hitting it when he hit it in the King Seat match to bring it to a last leg decider, shows that he can play great under pressure, and he has a great top end. The mathing ability might come into play. In fact, it probably will come into play at some point. But I think that if Derek can come out with that same form that we saw out of him in Houston, then Joe Cheney's going to have a lot of trouble here, and it's going to take his A+ game to get through this.
And finally, our last matchup, we have last year's runner-up, the Catalonian, Carlos Arola Clapis. I'm not even going to be ashamed of that, versus Gary Kieper. Here, I think Carlos came in as an unknown and surprised some people. He's not going to be able to do that again, but I think he did establish himself as a top player in this tournament, and I give him just the slightest edge over Gary here in this first round.
Yeah, this is a tough little quadrant here with that last match and then this one. I think one thing of note from last year in Carlos's run is how many game 5s he was able to come through. Like we were talking about it, it was last leg decider after last leg decider, and that is clearly a like you step up when the pressure is like on you. And that level of nerves just is kind of unmatched. And I think for that reason alone, like you kind of have to feel like Carlos is going to make another good run. So for me, it's his to lose. And I will be very excited to see him if he does come through against either Joe Cheney or Derek Hinkle.
if you're in this event and you're underestimating anybody by year 3, I think you're a fool, right? I mean, that's simply the case. There's so many competitors here, and I don't care if you're playing a female that won her singles in a different format. If you're playing a qualifier from Spain, someone that got one of those remote qualifiers last second. I don't care who you're playing. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna feel like a grind, and it's gonna be an intimidating room to be in just in the first place, right? You walk into there, you're surrounded by top talents. Both these guys are going to be well aware of that, and you're right. There's going to be no surprises. There's not the Catalonian will not be able to just go in there and be like, "Hey guys, I don't know what I'm doing here," and then just go on Cinderella run. It'll be by merit. And the thing is, if the game 5 wins is what makes the difference, you can't teach clutch, and it seems like Carlos has that one. And I'm really excited to see if he can repeat that performance, or if any of the other people from Spain can repeat that performance. It should be very interesting to see how that one will develop.
Well, that brings us to the end. I think we've got it all figured out. Each of the matches are going to go exactly as we've described them, even though we all kind of described them a little bit differently. And so place your bets accordingly.
Yeah. So this is scripted, by the way, guys. We have this all written down in advance, and we already know the results. The winner this year is. No, I'm just kidding. Oh no, but that's just our thoughts on it, right? I mean, DJ, Gordon, myself, we've been at the tour this whole stretch, right? We've been there, we've been interacting with these players, and if not, we've been commentating these players and trying to familiarize ourselves. And hopefully, we can just try to transgress that knowledge to you guys, so you guys know what you're going to be watching. If you guys want to tune in, August 1st on our Facebook and YouTube platforms, you'll be able to go ahead and watch the play-in rounds there to see who gets on to day 2 to play on ESPN2 for our top 4 there to see who will get crowned the champion of the BullShooter Invitational 2024. Of course, big shout outs to Operators Distributing as well for sponsoring this event. Besides that, I'm really excited. I'm really curious on who's going to do the run this year. Hashtag Mike Porterfield 2024 is going to be my pick as my final. Like, if I had to pick one guy, that's the one I'm picking this year.
I'm not going to go that far just yet. I have the advantage of commentating the entire play-in, so maybe you'll hear a pick early doors in on the ESPN broadcast on where I think it's going. But I do think this field has gotten better every year, and I think that speaks volumes to just the tournament's growth overall. And again, I like talking about darts in a wider kind of context, but being able to sit down and go through these brackets, and yes, I know most of these people, and yes, some of them probably hate the things that I say at times, but I think that's all part of what it is to be a sport and to kind of grow up into what we hope is something that we can watch on ESPN2 every day, or even make an appearance on ESPN1 every once in a while. So excited to be a part of this yet again, and looking forward to that play-in tournament, and then ultimately seeing who comes out on top next Friday.
Well, I know you guys are all looking forward to watching along and supporting these players. Don't forget to tune in. Of course, thanks to each and every one of you for watching us ramble here for the last 30 or so minutes. And besides that, looking forward to seeing you guys in Rock Hill. God bless it. I almost had that sign off. That was so great. And then I just completely fumbled the entire thing. Guys, thanks for tuning in. And we're looking forward to seeing you in Rock Hill, South Carolina to see how this bracket plays out.